Good afternoon, everybody, as we get our last people to log in. So welcome to our ongoing series, The Future of. The topic this month is influencers. I'm Tom Hinkenius, the director of FIDM's Bachelor in Digital Marketing and in Graphic Design. I want to start with a stat that said to us, we need to talk about this. This year, just actually a month ago, eMarketer predicted that brands will spend a combined $3.6 billion on influencer marketing. And as you can see, that's up more than a third from last year, which was down a bit during the pandemic. And you can see after that where it's intended to go over the next 2 years, with more than $4.6 billion spent on influencers, specifically around marketing in the year 2023. Most of that money is going to campaigns like this one that was recently launched by the White House to reach 12 to 39-year-olds who aren't vaccinated yet. New York Times reported on this story that the White House enlisted an army of over 50 influencers to help spread a pro-vax message. The state of Colorado actually took it one step further. They're paying influencers up to $1,000 a month to promote vaccines. But that's not the only part of the influencer economy that's caught our attention recently. There are brand partnerships. You've probably heard of them as collabs, like this one. This was during Pride Month between RuPaul's Drag Race contestant Shea Coulee and Goose Island Beer. That was a pretty cool one. We also see influencers launching their own brands. This one, Amber Fillerup-Clark, she's got just under 2 million Instagram followers, launched Day Hair Care this year, raised 2.6 million in a recently closed seed round. And as you'll learn today, there's a movement to put more power into the hands of the influencers. Two creators recently launched a sort of glass door for influencers. I can't really say the name to you. You can read it on the screen right there, but creators can leave reviews of brands they've worked with. Then the creators would also be able to share ad rates, give and get crucial information that would help them negotiate the sponsorship deals with brands. The founders, they say, aim to have creators be paid more equitably, which is something that's of concern. Male creators are actually earning an average of $476 per post. Female, on the other hand, $348 per post, according to a recent analysis by Clear, which is an influencer marketing platform. Variety reported these stats: 50 million creators working today, only 0.1% making a living at it. And the thing that really caught my eye, a survey found that 86% of young Americans want to grow up to be a social media content creator. But like the days of yore, when I was in high school, when they said like 0.1% of people will be professional baseball or basketball players, we now say that about becoming an influencer. It's a part of our zeitgeist. So that's the playing field we're talking about today. Let's get to the players we want to talk to. We'll speak with a co-founder of a company designed to support influencers specifically as they go about launching products, which, as you already heard, is something that they're doing and making quite a killing at. We'll also speak with the founder and CEO of the American Influencer Association, which hosts the annual American Influencer Awards. It's held in the same theater as the Oscars. So I think that gives you a sense of the stature of the space. Our first guest, though, is actually a personal friend of mine. I'm so grateful she's decided to talk to us today. I have watched her for a few years now grow her content creation business from a side hustle to now one of those 0.1% who make a living at it. It's actually been super impressive to watch her because she doesn't actually come from the spaces we typically associate with influencers. That would be like beauty, fashion. She is a flute player. Makes her living creating content for YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Recently, she's begun dabbling in TikTok. I want to show you first, though, an example of her work. Take a look and a listen. If you haven't followed her yet, I definitely suggest following Gina Luciani, who is a flutist and a content creator, and thankfully a very good friend of mine. And I'm so glad to welcome you, Gina. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. This is a
It is
pleasure.
well, and it's my pleasure to have you. As I said in my intro and leading up to bringing you on today, I've been so impressed watching you build this following these last few years. And I wonder if you want to just start maybe with that piece, like how exactly you have built that following.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I went to a music conservatory for my undergrad called Colburn Conservatory. It's downtown LA, pretty close to FIDM, not like maybe a mile or something. And then I went to USC for my master's degree, and then I entered the world of being a freelance musician. And for me, that was really difficult because I was so used to performing very frequently, because when you're in school, you are just assigned like you're in this orchestra, or you're doing this performance or whatever it may be. And also just because I was starting out, things were kind of slow at the beginning. And so I decided, well, I want to create something every single day. As silly as that sounds, it just felt good to put something out into the world creatively, whether that's a picture, a video, whatever that may be. So I started doing that pretty soon after graduating from my master's program. And then, so started on Instagram and then transitioned also onto Facebook and YouTube. Recently, like you said, started a little bit on TikTok. And so basically, I just started doing that. And then I had a couple brands reach out to me to start creating content for them, and in the form of videos. And so we actually have contracts that are monthly videos. So started doing a lot of that, and it's just really, I guess in the last 2 years probably is where it really just blossomed. And that was really a huge thing for me, especially during the pandemic, just because, you know, I'm a musician. I would say like being a musician is adjacent to being a content creator. So with that being said, it was just everything shut down. You know, I'm used to going into the studio and recording. Luckily, I had a remote setup, so I was doing that at home, but all in-person gigs were canceled. All concerts were canceled. I had multiple things that I was supposed to be doing that got completely canceled. And I was kind of freaking out, but thankfully I had the steady income that I was receiving from being a content creator, both from contracts as well as affiliate marketing and things like that. And surprisingly, my most successful year that I've had was last year during the pandemic. So I was just very grateful that, you know, things happened to go the way that they did, because I know a lot of my colleagues that aren't on social media struggled a lot this past year, and it was really difficult for them, and they had to start like, I'm gonna get my real estate license, or, you know, something like that to actually have an income. So I was really thankful for that. But it's just been really amazing to be able to work with these different companies. And like you were talking about earlier, releasing different products and stuff like that, I've been starting to do that for myself as well. And that's been a lot of fun, and doing collaborations with different brands of creating signature instruments and things along like that. So anyway, it's been really great, and I enjoy it.
So, okay, so I heard you talk about contracts, affiliate links, signature instruments, sponsored posts. I'm assuming because you're on YouTube. In fact, I already know this because I watched a video this morning and I saw a pre-roll ad. Anything we're missing in terms of where the income's coming from, just to get a sense of like all of the revenue streams coming in?
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating when you start breaking it down. I have this whole spreadsheet to kind of track everything. So yeah, you're exactly right. So I have those monthly videos that I'm doing with the companies, the contracts that I have. So one of them, we just signed our fourth consecutive year of contracts. And then I have another one that I'm in the second year. And then, like you said, I have sponsored posts. So those might be one-offs or a couple posts, depending on the company and whatever we decide to do for that. And then affiliate links and marketing. Amazon is one of those. I have a storefront there. Then a lot of times with these different companies, whether it be gear such as headphones, or there's like these pedals that I use, as well as just different instruments that I use. I have affiliate links with those, so that if somebody uses my code, then I get a percentage, or if they click on my link, I get a percentage. So there's that. And then of course, YouTube ad revenue. And then from the music side, I also have, you know, like streaming revenue from Spotify and iTunes and all the things. So I think that is it. It's hard to remember everything. There's a lot of different pieces. So that's why I have to have the spreadsheet to like keep track of everything.
Any brands outside of the music space, and how do you work with those?
Yeah, so that's a little tricky to navigate because it's really important to me that I'm not just like, hey, buy this tummy tea or whatever, because I know a lot of influencers go that route, or, oh, I'm using Home Chef. Not that there's anything wrong with Home Chef. I used it for a long time, but it didn't really align with my brand. So for me, what I like to do is things that I feel like musicians would want to use and that actually semi apply. So recently, I just did a partner. I'm about to do a partnership. Rather, we just had the negotiation, but I'm going to be doing a partnership with Liquid IV. So for those of you who don't know, it's like this powder that you pour into your drink, and it helps you stay more hydrated, which as a musician is really important, given like you're on stage and you don't want to be drinking a ton of water and all the things. I don't want to go too far because TMI, but it's good to stay hydrated no matter who you are. So things like that, things that actually pertain to musicians and my brand. So those are some of the ways that I go outside of the music realm and partner with different companies.
I'm a huge fan of Liquid IV myself. No brand sponsorship here. I'm just saying it's good stuff. That's a good one. So you look for that natural integration. You want it to be as natural as can be. Did you reach out to Liquid IV? Did they reach out to you? How did that happen?
Yeah, I actually reached out to them. I'm a big advocate for that because I think it's really important to be working with companies and brands that you actually like. I do have a lot of people reach out to me and then I've never tried their products before, or I've tried it and I didn't like it. And so I would say probably 80 to 90% of emails I get, I don't say yes to, just because I don't want to cheapen what it is that I am delivering. And I think that's really important to maintain the level of respect, like that people know whatever it is that I'm promoting that I actually truly believe in. So in the case of Liquid IV, I've actually been using it for, I don't know, 6 to 8 months or something like that. I love it so much. And so I reached out to them and I just said, hey, I use this all the time. I think musicians would be very interested in this, and, gave them some information. And so they wanted to partner with me.
The other interesting thing I think about you, this is not meant to come off as a negative at all. I think it's surprising what your follower count is, considering how well you're doing with it. Do you want to share your follower count total across everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, I think I'm at 33,000. On YouTube, I'm at 41,000, I believe. And Facebook, I'm at like 37,000. So in total, it's over 100,000, but not one specific platform. But so the reason that I think that things have been as successful as they have been for me is because of that trust that I have with my followers. They know that whatever it is that I am giving to them, I truly believe in, and it's something that I personally use. And so there's this trust component. And I think a lot of other influencers just are completely in it just for the money. And, there's nothing wrong with that. You have to make a living somehow. But at the same time, I think it's really important to have that trust and for them to know, like, if I'm showing something to you, it's because I really, really love product, whatever it may be. And yeah.
And I get that trust piece, and I certainly think that's important. It's so fascinating though, because you're technically what would be considered a micro influencer, not a macro, which typically, like in the industry, we would say we're looking for 100,000 more followers plus. So you're right on that cusp. But those folks, and I've talked to several of them, they don't make money. But you are making money. So it's the trust. Do you also think it makes a difference that you're in a different space? Like you're outside of beauty and fashion, you're in music. And so there's not as many, it's less competitive.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's obviously very oversaturated, like, the beauty influencers and bloggers and all those people in those spaces. And so I think you basically do have to have a massive following in order to be seen and to be successful in those spaces. Whereas in the music world, there's definitely a lot less competition. And also it's just such a niche area, if one of these companies would have normally wanted to place an ad in a magazine or whatever it might be, like the old school ways of marketing, I don't think they would be very successful. And so when they do reach out to influencers, I think that they do end up getting a lot more response, for their ad dollars, if you will. Like it's way better for them. And so I think, yeah, being in a niche space, I think really has been beneficial for me.
And I'm just curious also then, how has it benefited your career? I know a couple of years ago you played Coachella with Kanye. I know I've seen you posting at the Hollywood Bowl where you've been playing. Can you connect a straight line from the work you're doing to these really, big performances that you're getting? You're being able to secure this great work as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say entirely directly because, it's been a steady climb for that part of my career. However, a lot of times I will go to a gig and somebody will say, oh, I love your videos or something, and I hadn't met them before. And so they obviously had seen my videos. But yeah, there's been times though, definitely for different films and things that I have played on that they've kind of sought me out because of social media. So I'm trying to think. I think Minari was one of those. If you guys saw the film Minari, I was one of the soloists on that, and that was in part due to social media and things. So it does play a role. I wouldn't say it's like the main reason, but it definitely does play a role.
I think first you have to be talented. Clearly, and we know you have that. At least I know, thankfully,
thank you.
That you have that. We call this series The Future Of. I want to share this screen real quick and have you take a look. So this is your TikTok page. I'm just curious, as you think about the future, obviously, TikTok is the present and likely into the future as well. But what do you see the future of influencers? The big thing with TikTok is it's bite size, it's short. It's highly engaging. It's a totally different model. And even looking at your content, it looks different on TikTok than it does on YouTube. What does that play into your thoughts on the future of this space? How do you stay relevant? How will you continue to make it your primary source of income?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. What we were seeing from most influencers for a very long time is obviously Instagram was one of the biggest platforms. And along with Instagram, it was photo based. And so it was all about the feed, all about the aesthetic, heavily curated pictures. And that's not the case anymore. It's not about the feed. And I think it's going a little bit more to being a little bit more vulnerable and raw and unedited to a degree. People still use, video filters and things like that. But I think that has changed a lot. And definitely video is going to be king for a very long time, I think. And like you were saying, it's the short form content that we're seeing rise, and everybody kind of got really spooked by TikTok because obviously over the past, year, like during the pandemic, especially, it just blew up. And so now Instagram is primarily putting a lot of focus on that. And interesting is, so they reached out to me and did like a video call with me, Instagram did, and it was all about Reels and how to use Reels, which is obviously directly competing with TikTok. And so they were talking about strategies with that and everything. And so they are heavily prioritizing Reels now. And a lot of influencers have been seeing a huge dip in engagement, especially with those, regular pictures that they had been using and been very successful with. And it's now a little bit of like playing the game compared to how it used to be before. Instagram, you post a picture, make sure to put your hashtags in there, make sure it's a good picture and tag the location and engage with people. And, as long as it was tagged appropriately, usually would find its audience. But now that's not the case. And, pictures that I used to post that would get thousands of likes, I'm lucky now sometimes to get like 500 or 600 likes, which is crazy. So they're not pushing that in the algorithm anymore. And so I think it's been a struggle for certain influencers that are not comfortable on camera, who are not comfortable making video content, maybe don't have ideas for video content. It's been a struggle. So I think that is definitely where things are going, and people need to feel comfortable with that. Obviously, it could be done in a number of ways. As a musician, things that I have gravitated towards are either performance videos, or, which is pretty obvious, or just like advice, like educational things, helping musicians get started in the workplace. So those are the ways that I'm kind of shifting things so that it works better with these different platforms and how they're evolving.
I also think it's super interesting, and you sort of just mentioned it in passing, but I want to bring a point to it, is that Instagram reached out to you because the platforms also recognize the value that people like you bring, and you set the trend for what the average user does. So the platforms are also reaching out to the influencers, the content creators, and saying, we want you to do X, Y, or Z. And that's to help push the platform forward as well, which is it's just fascinating. It's been so interesting to cover this space for the last few years. Gina, we'll come back to you. I just want to remind our audience, as everybody knows, we've been at this for a while, Q&A button at the bottom if you have a question specifically for Gina or for any of our panelists. I want to share another screen though, as we ask Ranak to turn on his screen. You're looking here now at where I actually found Ranak. And I was reading the New York Times. This article says a lot. Silicon Valley's investors want to meet you. Subheadline is what really caught my interest. The online influencer culture is starting to draw serious interest from big venture capital firms, but the real money could be in digital tools, not the personality. Pietra, the company that he co-founded, recently closed a $15 million funding round. So I wanted to invite you to join us to talk about what the VC money is so interested in. At first, though, let's just define what the company is. So do you want to start with that? And good afternoon. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'd love to start with defining the company. Pietro's mission is to enable a future where a single creator can launch and scale the next best-selling product line. And very simply put, we build tools that allow people to take an idea that they have in their head, like I would like to start an athleisure line because I'm a fitness blogger, and put a product out in market in 90 days or less. And we focus on removing all of the parts of creating a commerce business or launching a business online, while leaving in the creative parts of the business that people want to take part in. And so we are, a digital tool set very similar to a Shopify, but now for all the tools that you need to start a business and keep a business running, selling stuff online.
So you were mentioning to me before, 50,000 creators now using the platform. 70% of them are first-time entrepreneurs, which I just think is fascinating. And 80% specifically in fashion, candles, fragrance, skincare. So within the spaces that the college specifically touches, you kind of grow or explain it as a step-by-step formula, a three-step formula. What are those 3 steps that you guys enable?
Yeah, good question. Good prompt, I should say. And yes, the vast majority of them are first-time entrepreneurs. Vast majority are women, and fashion, beauty, and candles and fragrances are the top. So we find that we can help people with 3 distinct things. The first thing that we can help creators with is what I call sourcing and product development. This is the most nebulous, time-consuming thing in the world, where if you talk to someone who has an idea, for example, to start a denim line, they just say, I would like to meet a great supplier and sample some denim, sample some fabric and create my denim line. In reality, it takes 3 years to find a supplier that you want to work with. And so what we do is we have a marketplace of all these different suppliers, and we call them partners, from around the world. So we have teams that go around and try and find the best factories that work with some of the biggest names, whether they're domestic, they're international. We go all around the world and we make them so that you can basically connect with them, search for them, find out how to work with them very, very easily. And by the way, we not only just list out all the best suppliers in the world, you can actually browse their catalogs, sample their products and formulas. You can talk to them and collaborate with them directly through the platform if you want to make a custom product. You want to make a custom skincare formula, you can use Pietra to not only connect with the supplier, but talk about the ingredients, and they'll send you some samples. So it's pretty cool in that sense. The second part that we help with is once you've developed a product or you have something that you are really excited about selling, maybe you designed a dress, or maybe you designed a blazer, or there's infinite things that you can think of. We help you set up your business so that in just a few clicks you can start selling online. And so an example is, after you've produced 100 pieces of clothing that you want to sell, or 1,000, you can spin up a fulfillment center and a storage facility, and organize someone to assemble your final product. Assembly being something like adding hang tags to your clothes to make it feel like your brand.
Yeah.
And so instead of now having to hire 3 different services to do that, all of a sudden you could just, in a few clicks, say, hey, Pietra, I'm going to use your fulfillment center, your warehouse, and I want you to assemble all of my products and my packaging that I've ordered from all my suppliers in your marketplace. And we'll go ahead and do that for you. And then the third part is, we actually have very simple e-commerce tools that allow people to sell online. If you're a first timer, you can go ahead and sell on our creator marketplace. You can think of that as creator Etsy, where we give you everything you need to start selling online very quickly. And then if you're an advanced user, you can go ahead and connect, your Shopify website or your Instagram account, or, all the other integrations that we have. So we kind of bring you through the 3 steps of starting a business, which is, we help you with producing your product and manufacturing it. We help you with setting up your business, which is the nitty-gritty parts of like a warehouse and fulfillment center. And then we provide the tools for you to start selling online very easily. And hopefully what this translates to is, you go from thinking of this as a big daunting task of starting your own company with 10 people and getting investment, to something you can do on a Saturday through your laptop, and lowering that barrier of entry to starting a business, hopefully bringing cooler ideas into the world.
What I'm hoping some of our maybe graduates who are watching, some of our industry partners who may be watching right now, recognize also that there's value outside of the influencer space for a company like yours. I think about our students here at the college who've graduated with a degree in fashion design. You mentioned denim. We offer a degree in denim. All these things that we offer here, you sort of are simplifying the process for those even young entrepreneurs without necessarily the social following to jump in and do and create and launch, which I think is, are you seeing that kind of interest in your platform also?
Totally. I would say there is, we started in the creator influencer space because they have special properties, but every single week, I think we have more and more people that just have ideas and want to bring their ideas to life.
Yeah.
And we're definitely seeing that everyone is an influencer to someone. And the kind of inspirational thing is, we're noticing that some people with smaller audiences and just good ideas for products and make something really cool with a supplier can actually outsell a traditional influencer, because it's authentic, it's unique, they have some background in it, and the product ends up being better. And so I think that over time, this is going to start as just creators are really excited about launching their own product lines. But I see that, Tom, like the graduates are going to say, you know what, I have a really unique perspective on a product, and the internet's tired of t-shirts with logos on them. Maybe we can go do something, very unique. And I think those are going to be the most successful brands in the long term.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I think, so many of the influencers, and not to knock any of them, but they just put out a t-shirt with a branding on it, or there's not really a creative line. There's no point of view to the fashion or the design or the beauty that they're creating, the products. So what we are able to give the student is I think valuable. But to go back to the influencers, though, there is something attractive in that business model that's got to be what's partially, at least, getting you some of this VC money. What is it about the influencer specifically that got your interest initially, that, okay, this business idea partners really well with this cohort of people?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story. When we started the company, the creator economy, passion economy kind of wasn't a thing. And even the word influencer was like a bit of a dirty word when it comes to like the business world. And I don't think that, I like to put it very simply. When we were starting the platform, we noticed that the people that were the most successful had 2 things going for them. They were super authentic, and they were making stuff that didn't feel like they're selling another person's product. And the second part of that was they just had a mastery of content and marketing online. And so now we would call them influencers and creators because they take awesome products. But honestly, I remember the first person that I saw was being like, wow, this person's really popular. They were a mother-daughter duo who just had a great story and knew how to use Instagram really well. This is pre-TikTok, pre-Clubhouse. And so I don't even like to think that it was a marriage between, influencers and business creation. I think of it as content and commerce coming together, where we have a group of people that are really, really good at content and they really want to make money through commerce. And so what's better than making a video, when you're taking a photo at the beach, you're wearing your own swimwear. That to me is like the perfect kind of coming together of an idea. And so again, I come back to, they just happen to be someone who is leveraging these social tools to grow a brand and make it feel authentic. And that's how this came to be. And of course it's exploded. And I think in both ways, I think influencers are becoming more and more interested in the production and learning about design and that kind of cool stuff. And then we're also seeing people who are really smart with design and have the background in it, learning how to become more like influencers, right? You find your audience and you start growing your customer base. So it's really cool to kind of see these two worlds coming together.
I'm curious what you think as my last question to you. Same question I asked Gina, see if we can get some consensus around this. But to pitch it to you, I'll just set it up this way. I've talked to some other brands who say to me, this whole thing with influencers launching a bunch of different brands, it's not sustainable. That these massive mega brands really are going to regain the universe, right? They've been pickaxed away. They're trying to buy up the small guys like crazy. So with that on mind, what's your thought on the future of influencers?
Wow, are there any reporters on here? What should I say? No, I think that I have a very, strong stance on this for better and for worse. I think that with every generation, we, as a tech community and in general, end up building infrastructure that puts more power in the hands of people that are creative, right? And this is just another evolution of that in the world. And I'll give you a simple analog, which is if you look at every decade, there was some version of this happening, which is the people that were winning in the previous decade are then trying to adapt to the new decade. And at one point in time, it was really, really advantageous to be a mall, right? You had real estate, and because you had that real estate, brands wanted to be in the place that everyone goes to. And then over time, the internet came, and people don't think of it like this, but the infrastructure of the internet allowed real estate to be, something that everyone can have, a website. And so DTC brands and said look, it's no longer valuable to have physical real estate. You now have digital real estate, and anyone can be anyone can be an owner. And so I think of this in the same way to make the point, which is the biggest thing that established brands have is not necessarily creativity or even the audience baked in. It's the infrastructure to take an idea and bring them to life. Mm. And if we do our job really well, does Rihanna really need to go to LVMH to use their factories to make a beauty line? Or can you actually have a small team of people who have access to the same factories, the same fulfillment network, and build this brand herself? And I think what we're going to see over the next 25 years is you don't need these bigger brands. I would say, let me flip it. The creators don't need the bigger brands anymore. They have the audience, they have the online distribution, they have the e-commerce online, and now they have the production infrastructure. What do they need the larger people to scoop them up for? They should just keep all the equity and start making sales, And I think we're going to see this huge shift, and it's not unlike the past. And I think it's very fun, and there's a whole panel to be said about putting someone against me on the other side of that. And the last thing I'll say to this, which is, we are not saying that every brand is going to be successful. That has never happened in the history of the world. But what we want to do is we want to always put more ideas out in the world to see what the market likes, right? And so we're not saying that everyone's going to be successful or that this world isn't going to be, not following the same rules of like people end up gravitating towards the top 10 brands. I just think it's going to be the different 10 brands. And if you doubt me on that, I'd say go to a 13-year-old and ask them what clothes they wear and see if any of them are the same that I wore or my parents wore. And it probably won't be.
Well, except my nephew, whose birthday is today, wanted Champion, which was huge when I was a kid, and all of a sudden the kids are all wearing it again. And then to your point, like, and I not to belabor it, but to your point, there is that counter argument that LVMH needs Rihanna because she brings the cash to them, and then also they bring the cash to her. Both ships rise in the rising tide in that case. So
totally. And
there's
we're just
more to talk
redefining
about
the
here.
relationship. Yeah, we're just redefining the relationship between older brands and newer brands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So again, Q&A at the bottom. There's already a couple questions coming in. We will come back to you, Ro. Thank you so much. I want to introduce our last guest. We've heard the perspective of the creator. We've heard this perspective of the business the creator creates. Now let's just pull all the way out and just kind of take a look at the industry. Our next guest is the founder and president of the American Influencer Association. They host the American Influencer Awards. Christopher, I know yours is something of a new organization, but I was really fascinated to learn where you are trying to take this. Am I right in saying that what SAG is to actors, you want the American Influencer Association to be for content creators?
Yes, absolutely, in a sense. Essentially, I'll give you an example. When we first, back in 2016, when my wife and I actually had been introduced to the influencer marketing space, we felt that there were two needs. Number one, we felt that influencers needed to be recognized for their talent because of the efforts and the things that they're doing on, online. And the second piece was we felt that we had to differentiate professional influencers from non-professionals. And what I mean by that is, it's the example I like to give is it's kind of like somebody walking into Walmart and buying a baseball glove and a baseball bat and calling themselves a professional baseball player. And back in 2016, and even still, we felt that the influencer marketing space was very similar to that. Everybody was an influencer. Anybody that had a social media platform was essentially an influencer. So that's really where the association came into play is, us trying to differentiate the professionals from non-professionals, if you will.
And how, when you get there in the perfect world, what will that look like? How will they be differentiated?
Yeah, great question. Well, we ultimately decided to lead with the American Influencer Awards platform first, just because that's more exciting for influencers, of course. So in 2017, we launched the American Influencer Awards, had our first show in November in downtown Los Angeles. Had a tremendous turnout. We launched in the beauty space, recognizing influencers within beauty. And we have since obviously now expanded into all categories, which we're excited about. But anyway, the award show's now become a household name within the beauty space, at least. So now that we're going to be expanding, it's now time for us to be officially launching the American Influencer Association, which has been in the works for the last couple of years. And we're real excited about that. So to answer your question in regards to what it's going to look like, it's kind of like you had mentioned the SAG of the entertainment industry, or think of it like the Bar Association for attorneys. We want to be an organization that essentially builds community, that brings influencers together, that puts on events, that gives influencers the opportunity to learn about the industry for those that are aspiring to become an influencer, by offering education. All influencers essentially are independent contractors. So we want to be able to offer health benefits, opportunities for legal advice to contracts so that they can understand how to build a business, from the core of, from building the foundation, essentially. So there's a lot of different components to the association, but essentially people would be applying to be part of it. We have an advisory board that essentially would review the applications, and depending on where they are in their career, they're essentially tiered and potentially accepted into the association. Also, too, our organization essentially gives these brands out there an opportunity to report back to us. So, we hear of a lot of fraud in the industry. It's certainly gotten better with the FTC and some of the different things and regulations that have been put in place. And we'll continue to see that, of course, as time goes on. But, just like the Bar Association, if a company gets ripped off, they pay an influencer, send them products, and they disappear. If they're part of our association, of course, they can now report back to us and let us know that something like this took place. We could, of course, investigate the situation. and ultimately decide that that person's no longer part of the association. So moving forward, brands can determine if they want to work with them independently, even though they may not be part of our organization. So there's different examples and things like that that we're really looking to put in place here in the near term future.
I'd like to stay for a second on the awards piece of it. I love the thought of behind all of it. And it obviously, as we look at the creative industries, the Oscars are supported by the Academy, Emmys by the Television Academy, SAG has its own awards now as well. So you have these awards. From what I read, 2 million online voters participated in this, or 2 million online votes. What I wonder from you, though, is what is it those voters want? If there's some conclusions you can draw from what they're voting for and who's winning your awards that maybe all of us could be learning from and paying more attention to.
Sure, absolutely. Great question. So the American Influencer Awards essentially recognizes talent on social media, of course, specifically influencers, and they're recognized for their talent. They're recognized for their creativity. There's a lot of different things at the advisory board. That's a separate advisory board that the award show has. But they're essentially recognized for a lot of different things. Of course, creative content, how creative they are. Do they fit the category, of course, which I give you some examples here in a second. What kind of creative content do they have? What's their engagement? What's their follower count? How many platforms are they involved in? Are they influencing in a positive way, right? That's very important to our organization. So there's a lot of different characteristics that we're looking at. To give you some examples, we've had the makeup influencer of the year within the beauty space. We've had the hair influencer of the year. Those are some of the bigger categories, of course. We also have emerging categories for the micro influencers as well. We have international categories. So, typically if the American Influencers are recognizing talent for anybody that's based here in America. Mm-hmm. But again, we do have international categories, and we've had people fly in from all over the world to attend the award show, not only from a brand perspective, but of course from an influencer perspective as well, for those that are nominated. And for those that aren't nominated, we've even had people come in just to support, other influencers in the industry. In our most recent numbers, actually, you had mentioned was, we actually had 5 million online votes come in last year. Those people that are voting are typically people that are following the influencers that are nominated. A lot of times you'll see the influencers, campaigning for votes.
So it's a bit of a popularity contest.
It can be a little bit. Yeah, it's a weighted average. So
okay.
we've got the general public or followers who can go onto our website, which is actually going to be coming up in September for this upcoming award show. They can go to our website, they could vote, but we also have the advisory board as well. And so the advisory board is made up of a bunch of different people across the different industries, an executive from Reebok, et cetera, et cetera. You go to our website, aiawards.com, to check it out. But the advisory board has a weighted vote as well. And that's pretty heavily voted upon. And weighted, actually, so that way it does not become a popularity contest.
So what's your takeaway, though, from it is, as you look at the winners, what is it that people are drawn toward? What is it that's most successful?
It really just depends. It depends on category. You know what? Every year, it seems as though the people that are winning the categories are the ones that are most influential, the ones that are positive, that, positively influencing, as I mentioned. That naturally tends to happen. You get a lot of people that have great engagement, that stay out of the gossip. They're not being talked about in a negative way. They're not having negative press articles written. And ultimately, again, it sounds cliche, but having creative content, it's a difficult industry. I talk to influencers all the time, and one of the biggest things they struggle with is creating content. It's, if you create something, especially with this cancel culture nowadays, a lot of influencers complain about how when they create certain content, their biggest fear is that other influencers are going to come out of the woodworks and say, I've already done that, right? So it's a matter of trying to figure out how you can be more creative and not, quote unquote, copy somebody else's content that they've done in the past.
Interesting. Let me ask you this question, since you spend a lot of time with these influencers. I showed at the beginning of this, and a new company, a startup launched by a couple influencers. We can't say the name because, we're a college and we try to keep the language discourse at a higher level. But, part of their concept is they want to be able to give influencers an opportunity to compare who they're, who's paying their bills, and also lay out prices. Right? Like, here's how much this company paid me, with how many followers I have, et cetera. Do you see any kind of consistency starting to develop around that? Because that has been the biggest complaint from marketers, is they really have a hard time judging what I should pay any particular influencer. Are you seeing any consistency in that space?
Not really. Everybody has a rate sheet. Everybody has a rate sheet. I mean, you know, I've personally worked with influencers before we even created the American Influencer Awards and the association. And, you know, you'll run into some influencers that they have, say, 500,000 followers, and it's a needle in a haystack, but they may not charge anything. They just want free product and they're going to post. And then you'll come across some people that have 12,000 followers and they want to get paid $250 to post. So it's really the wild, wild west still. And that's something that we certainly as an organization want to focus on as we continue to move forward. You know, come up with a way to somehow not necessarily regulate what people are making in the influencer space, but more about, like you said, having that transparency. You know, I think in the beginning, brands were willing to pay a lot more than what you're seeing now. You're starting to see a tremendous shift with brands working with micro and even nano influencers now. Nano's one of the newer terms. You know, influencers that might have, everybody has different definitions, but, you know, might have a following of 1,000 or even less. You know, you're seeing more authenticity. It seems to be more organic and it resonates well with the audience. So again, it's the wild, wild west, but, you know, with time, with, you know, as the industry shifts and starts to stabilize and people start to realize that influencer marketing is not going anywhere, which I know is the topic for the end here, you're going to start to see, it should start to stabilize here in the near future. So
then, you know, briefly, what do you see as the future of this space?
Oh, great question. I get asked this question all the time. You know, as far as the future, the first thing I say is it's not going anywhere. You know, there's speculation that this is going to be a $10 billion industry by 2025. Based on the numbers you were showing earlier, that shows it's going to be doubling, if not tripling, over the next few years.
Well, that was only the marketing spend. This isn't on the, you know, the stuff that Ro's talking about. That's not even calculated in those eMarketer stats. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, it's not, first of all, it's not going anywhere. Social media is not going anywhere. You know, as far as what we're going to see in the future, you know, you're certainly going to see change as far as technologies and trends, right? But ultimately, you know, as I mentioned before, you're going to see more micro and nano influencer involvements as far as brands engaging with them. You're going to see growth of influencer networks. You're going to see influencers starting to come together and work together. You've seen a lot of influencers working individually in the past, but I think you're going to start to see people come together. You're also going to see, of course, as I mentioned, stricter FTC rules and regulations, which is the Federal Trade Commission, of course. And the last thing I'll mention too is, you know, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but there's the emergence of more CGI, which essentially is the computer generated imagery. Mm-hmm. So you've got brands now that are actually creating their own influencers that look like real human beings. And it's really difficult to distinguish who's real and who's not. And I think that that's something that the FTC is certainly going to, one of the quickest things they're going to get involved in making sure that that's transparent. I don't know how quickly, but again, there's already brands out there that are using these computer generated accounts. And again, the general public has no idea. They think it's a human being. They have a name. They've got a face. They're put in real life situations. You know, they go to Australia, they go to these different destinations. And one of the advantages, of course, is these brands don't have to pay the influencer. They're in control of the influencer, and they don't have to worry about the influencer going and getting a felony tomorrow after they sign a collaboration deal with them and making the company look bad. So there's obviously, that's a whole nother conversation. There's a lot of pros that come along with it from a brand perspective, but of course, from a consumer perspective, a lot of cons as well.
I want to bring back Gina and Ro to join us and take a few more questions. We've got a few that have come in from the audience as well. It is interesting. We have addressed this, what you just brought up there, Christopher, in that piece about the, you know, deep fakes, if you want to call it that, the AI CG influencer. We've got that in our series in the past. So anybody who's interested in going deeper into that, certainly you could log on to our YouTube channel and take a look. I wonder though, for Gina and Ro, that is a fascinating space, right? Like it is super interesting. We've talked a lot about NFTs. We've talked a lot about Clo. We've actually spoken with the folks from Clo in this series about the work they're doing. Any thoughts on that and how that impacts? I mean, Gina, it would seem to me like you are a legit person. I don't know how you get replaced by CG, but do you? And then Ro, from your perspective, like, how does that impact the launch of businesses? Do I launch it with a I don't know, fake influencer? I don't know. Gina, I'll let you, since I mentioned you first. Thoughts on that?
Real people go first. Gina, go first.
I mean, it's fascinating. I don't really see, like, especially in my space, like musical artists being replaced so much. I mean, I suppose it could change, but at the same time, for us, we're performing live in front of actual people. So I guess that would be your way of figuring out who is or is not actually real. So it just depends. But I think my space is probably fine. But we'll see. It's a very interesting thing. And also when you were talking about NFTs, like, it's been interesting. I've done a couple projects that's how we're going to be paid, or like a portion of how we're going to be paid is through all that. And I won't say that I'm an expert on it at all. It's just been very fascinating hearing about it. And I've been in multiple rooms on Clubhouse and stuff, hearing people talk about it. I feel like every time you go on Clubhouse, there is another NFT.
There absolutely is.
You know, something. So that's always interesting. But yeah, we'll see how that space goes. It'll be really interesting.
Well, I'd love to get your point of view on this. And if you're even thinking about NFTs from a business point of view for Pietra.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't think that they will be able to figure out how to make really good music just off algorithms anytime soon. So I don't think there's a problem there. But I think the way I look at a creator, what we're finding is as this, you know, the creator economy becomes more mature and more people get comfortable with earning a living online, however, and however that, you know, unfolds, is I feel like you can sell digital content, right? Or you could sell physical products. And I think what we're seeing with NFTs is, you know, another great example of innovation in the digital content space, where, you know, before it was like, you could sell photos, you could sell courses, now you could sell, you know, collectibles, and there will continue to be innovations, I think, in the digital space. And remember, like, and then like the thing I say is, as they start innovating in the digital space, because it is digital by nature, it has this trade-off of it's accessible to everyone on the internet, and I think therefore monetizable less just by definition, right? And that's generally how it goes with digital products, and they will be in complement to physical products, right? And I think we are going to live in a world where if you are a creator and you live online, you have two major revenue streams. You have digital products that you make money from, and then you have physical products that you can make money from. And both will have, you know, awesome innovation, I think, to make it, you know, cheaper, easier, faster, all that good stuff.
Well, I have your attention.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could jump to one of the questions, which is actually repeated twice. So people are interested very much so in sustainability and worker exploitation right now. So I'm curious, and they're curious for Pietra, what sort of diligence do you do to make sure that there's sustainable practices in your vendors and that workers' rights are being protected and taken care of?
Yeah, great question. The only way to answer this is to say it's a long, slow process, and we manually check every person on our platform. And when they're overseas, we have people visiting the factories. And this is something where, you know, there's no way around it. We have a whole team that just vets these factories. And what we say, and I see the question here, which is what we say is, we want to highlight the best parts of manufacturing services. And so we give these factories and these partners the ability to identify themselves as, you know, certified or ethical. And if you do make this bold claim, we then require you, before we turn your profile on, to actually submit proof, right? So the most common one is like sustainable practices or certifications for beauty. And we actually have a human, not many humans actually, looking at each supplier and their documentation, and then deciding if they can be let through. And if they can't claim something that or they can't prove something that they're claiming, then they just don't get that designation on the platform.
There's been a lot of talk about COVID. Christopher, I'm wondering from your perspective, what, you know, and I can show that stat again, but how did the lockdown specifically really affect this space? What have you seen?
Yeah, great question. You know, from my perspective, at least from an influencer marketing perspective, you know, I think as the consensus would be, you know, you have to take one step backwards before you can take two steps forward. And what I mean by that was, I think when the coronavirus first hit and we started approaching that peak, there were certainly some influencers that were affected. And I say that because a lot of the brands, you know, were shutting down, of course, they were laying people off. The revenue wasn't quite there. They were having issues overseas as far as fulfilling products from a componentry, you know, perspective. So you know, and one of the biggest things that, you know, brands were doing was cutting off that influencer marketing budget because, again, they just really weren't sure where everything was going. But once things started to stabilize and people started to realize that COVID wasn't going away and they were going to have to adapt, you started seeing a lot of the brands who weren't already, you know, online, which, believe it or not, there's brands out there that weren't. They started to you know, make sure they've really focused online or create their online presence. And the brands that already were online, they started to put a bigger emphasis, of course, with the online selling. You know, because if they had distribution with Sephora and Ulta and Target, you know, obviously, you know, as Ronak had said earlier, that shelf space, that real estate now wasn't nearly as valuable in the COVID era. So they started putting more emphasis, you know, on e-commerce, and with that, they started to revisit those influencer marketing budgets. For those that weren't playing in the influencer marketing space, they started to play there, and for those that were already there, they started to increase their budgets, even if they had toned it back a little bit. You know, of course, there were some examples in some companies that just didn't make it during the COVID era, or you know, they haven't fully recovered, so they haven't been able to reestablish those budgets. But overall, from an influencer marketing perspective, there's certainly a lot more business out there that you know, just at least from the network that I've spoken to, where they've got tremendous opportunity now. You know, again, brands are still having issues with componentry issues and backorder issues, et cetera, et cetera. But as a whole, I think that the influencer marketing industry is doing better than it ever has.
Gina, I wonder from your perspective, how did the COVID lockdown affect the influencer? Forget the brands right now. Did you see, I mean, I would think people are home, they're on their phone. So you probably saw an upswing in participation, in followers. Did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. By far my YouTube ad revenue, like, it skyrocketed during that time. People also, just because, you know, a lot of what I'm doing is doing tutorials and teaching people how to play different instruments and things like that. Those went through the roof. In terms of like the affiliate marketing and things like that, that also went through the roof, just because people were like, oh, I'm going to try something new right now. And I think a lot of people did experience that, even beyond just like instruments and things like that. People are locked at home. And so what are they going to do? They're just going to go on their phone and consume content. And so I think, I mean, even just like looking at TV and film, I know there was like a shortage because, you know, everything, all the productions had to go on pause, and, you know, people didn't know what was happening with that. But it was actually really interesting from a reporting standpoint that a lot of these projects that originally were put on pause, but were in post, so they had already shot everything. They were like, let's put this out because people are at home watching so much content right now. And so we actually were, you know, recording full TV shows and films like from home, and they were assembling together an entire orchestra virtually, which is crazy. But I definitely think, like, for influencers, for the most part, there were problems with certain companies for sure, because they were, you know, cutting back on their funding for the marketing with influencers. And it just depended on the brand, though, because like there were certain companies I was working with that were asking me to do even more content for them than normal, and wanting to do more sponsored posts because they knew people were more online and wanting to, you know, try something new or whatever that may be. So there was a shift in both ways, but I would say in general for influencers, I think it was actually a really good time in terms of having people see what it is that you're actually putting out there.
I can't thank the three of you enough for participating with us today. It's just been so interesting to talk to you. So thank you for taking the time and for sharing some of your own observations, the businesses you've started and are currently running. I certainly, definitely appreciate it. I'm running my own screen today, folks, so it's taking me a minute here. Let me get it. There we are. Okay. So thank you to Gina and Ro and Christopher for joining us today. Next month on September 14th, we will be discussing the future of m-commerce, mobile commerce. This is such a fascinating topic. You shop online on your mobile device, then you go buy on a computer, or maybe you shop online and actually buy through your mobile device because now Instagram has that buy now button. Brands want us to click to buy on our cell phones, but are we actually doing it? That's sort of the biggest question that we'll be asking next month. We've got a great panel lined up of some thought leaders as well as some practitioners in the space. So we'll definitely look forward to seeing you there. You'll receive a link in the next day or so to a recording of today's episode, as well as a link to RSVP for next month's. I also want to plug one more thing that I'm involved in here at the college. One of my fellow professors, Mimi Sue, and I, every couple weeks, we meet on Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse to talk office hours. And we just really chat about what's going on in the industry of retail, entertainment, and tech. They all kind of confluence together, and Mimi and I have these really interesting, at least I think so, not biased at all, conversations around it. So we want to invite you to join us next Thursday, the 19th at 3 p.m. Pacific time, to join us on Clubhouse and or Twitter Spaces. You know, if you want to join us on both, that's totally fine, because that gives us numbers on both sides. Until we meet again, as always, we here at FIDM want to encourage you to stay inspired. And for now, have a great afternoon, everybody. Thanks.